Under Unit 1, that is Write Professional Emails in English, we discuss 1.1, that is How to Draft an Email, and 1.2, Basic Professional Email Structures. Now we will be discussing 1.3. 1.3 deals with basic editing of punctuation, capitalization, style, and editing basics. Let's discuss what an email is. It is a short form for electronic mail, and we send and receive messages over the internet with the help of the email. Why is email popular? Communicating by email is almost instantaneous, which enhances communication by quickly disseminating information and providing fast response to customer inquiries. So it also allows for quicker problem solving and more streamlined business processes. So despite the fact that there are numerous ways to communicate in today's world, email is the most important and commonly used one. Because of its great popularity, people all around the world are debating on how many accounts could be created. Why and how to make an effective email? It's very essential to have good email etiquette because the sender doesn't go in front of the receiver to explain what he would like to convey in the message. So by sending a good email with proper format, it helps one create a good impression on the receiver. Moreover, there is a higher possibility of we getting the response that we would like to. So how to make an effective email? First and foremost is to select the right audience or the receiver and to compose your messages correctly. Moving on, what are the rules for email etiquette? First and foremost, use a clear professional subject line. Subject line is of much importance. Point number 2, proofread every email you send. Point number 3, write your email before entering the recipient email address, because sometimes what it happens is after after writing the content, we may forget to attach the attachment as well. So always it is very essential to add the recipient email address at the end. Double check you have the correct recipient. It is very embarrassing when some confidential reaches the wrong hands. Confidential report reaches the wrong hands, and ensure you CC all relevant recipients. So it is unprofessional to leave out a colleague or client from a relevant email chain. So it's very important to make sure that all the CC recipients are properly included. Point number 6 is you don't have to reply all. So usually when it goes to the reply all, there will be a chain of people to everyone the email would go to. That is, if it is not required, you can just send to click on reply. Reply to your emails. Most people at some point have felt swamped by the large number of emails they have to sift through. But replying to an email is always a good etiquette, especially if the sender is expecting a response. So acknowledge you received the email, but you also will get back to the sender at a later time. And it's a professional alternative to ignoring or to avoiding certain emails. Include a signature block. So if your recipient doesn't know anything about you, he may be a little skeptical of the authenticity of your email. So it is professional to include your full name, title, company, your contact number, etc. And use the appropriate level of formality. For example, begin with dear, use please, say thank you wherever necessary. Kind regards, looking forward to hearing from you. All these are very formal, appropriate levels of formality. Next is keep always emails brief and to the point, because no one wants to read enormous chunk of data. So it's very difficult for them or even to you to send such long messages. So it's always worthy to send crisp and short emails. Let us discuss a few do's and don'ts of email etiquette. Do have a clear subject line. It's very important to have a proper subject line. Don't forget your signature, especially when you are sending to someone whom you are not familiar with. Do use a professional situation. Let us not resort to any unprofessional salutation. Never use humor, because humor is something that is not accepted in professional emails. Do proofread your message. It is mandatory to proofread your message, so that the things that what you would like to get from the receiver would come to you without much difficulty. Don't assume the recipient knows what you are talking about, and do reply to all your emails. Don't shoot from the lip. So, usually, what happens is when people don't reply on time, the number of mails could increase, and that would be a really difficult situation. So, it's better to check all the mails and reply before you leave for the day. A few more do's and don'ts. Offer to speak by phone or in person. So, email is not a good tool for clearing the confusion. So, in case there is any confusion between the sender and the receiver, it's always better to give a phone call or talk to that person directly, so that the confusion could be avoided. Never write anything in capital letters, because that is accepted as a kind of rude statement. Never say in email that you wouldn't say in person or would not like to see in the press or defend in court. So never use harsh words, never use personal stuff. Keep in mind that it is something that would be that can go against you. Once you hit the send button, you have lost control of the email. So it's always better to be careful about what you write. You can never be certain that it was erased from all locations. Think of all email as permanent. Email will remain as a permanent record somewhere in the browser. So it's always essential to think twice before clicking on the send button. Some other important aspects: never include personal or financial information in an email. Always you should have a good security suite on your personal computer. And the most important thing is, it's better to have a separate free email account for your white paper registrations or newsletters. And it's always good to have two emails, one for the professional and one for the personal work. And the most important thing is that you need to delete your browser history, cache, and cookies every time you use, especially when you are using someone's system or a public internet connection. Always remember to back up your email. Now, let us have a quick discussion on the 9 common email habits that usually takes our time off. Vague or non-existent subject line. So, once the subject line is not clear, it's difficult to for the receiver to understand what the topic is all about. Changing the topic without changing the subject. Please never do that. You should never change the topic without changing the subject. First thing that has to be done is to fill in the subject box. Include multiple subjects in one note and send before thinking. Never click on the send button unless you are sure about it. Let us discuss the 9 habits that are usually seen while sending emails. Inadvertent replying to all, that is one of the points that we discussed just now, and omitting the context of a reply, that should never be omitted, and we should be very careful while clicking on the recipients list, and displaying addresses of recipients who are stranger to each other. So it's always better to go for BCC or CC. While going for CC, it's always better to go for BCC. And replying versus forwarding. When you forward, it is usually someone's content that you are forwarding, and it will be seen also. It goes as a forwarded message. So it's always better to go for replying option. Message texting. There are a few things to be kept in mind. Always keep the message focused and readable. Let us not make general statements and beat around the bush. And always keep it short, precise, compact. Use inverted pyramid, that is like a newspaper. So it's given over there also, which is most important, less important, and the least important. Always break into paragraph and skip lines in between. So usually what happens is, if you write long paragraphs, people may not be interested in reading that. So it's always better to break into paragraphs. Use short sentences and active voices, and use plain text editor, not the MS Word, and avoid HTML and avoid fancy typefaces. Let's discuss a few do's and don'ts. Write in always standard professional English with capitalization and proofreading, proofread messages, and let the spelling be correct. Because usually it's very important that the messages have a formal touch. Never try to impress and never try to chat or speak. And never, as we just discussed in one of the previous slides, never go for all capital letters and avoid using terms like urgent and important, and never try to highlight text if like for example the highlighting the text, there are different ways of highlighting the text. You can put asterisk mark that your looks formal, but when something is made bold or in capital, that just gives a negative impression. Quote back selectively when replying to long messages like yes, I agree. And the top quote versus bottom quote is very important. And if that they don't go together, it doesn't really look good. And we need to be very careful while using the URL links. And that is one of the basic etiquettes that all of us should follow. Next is regarding attachments. It is always essential to use attachments sparingly. Sometimes what happens is when we intend to attach some file, we may forget. So it's always better to copy the attachment at the beginning itself and cut and paste only the relevant parts of the attachment. Use URL links as well. And recipients who do not know you may be reluctant to open the attachments and click the URLs. So always attach what is extremely required. Post attachment first to avoid oops, here is the attachment. So usually that happens. That is what I mentioned at the beginning of this particular topic. And giving people a chance to comment on attachment without a series of reply all messages could be done. Those interested can check comments or use the RSS feed to be notified. Next is about the style. Multiple replies can get out of hand, but continue them to maintain the thread. So when they start to drift, start a new thread with explanation. Always be true to your venue, whether it is a formal setup or an informal setup. Do not overuse high priority option. So you keep, imagine you are the class representative. You keep asking documents or files from your peers. You keep telling, oh, it's high priority, high priority. So they will lose interest. So really when it becomes like the wolf story. So really if you need a high priority response, you may not get it. And do not ask to recall a message. Just apologize and correct it. And do not copy a message or attachment without permission. And another most important thing is do not scoop someone else's message. That is highly unethical. Now, there is much difference between edit and proofread. Edit is to prepare something to be published or to make changes or correct mistakes. But proofread is to read and correct the mistakes in a written or printed piece of writing. So why are these two important? That is our next topic of discussion. Because if a matter is not properly edited or proofread, it conveys a very wrong impression to the sender. We can have a few examples. For example, more shops awaits you. It should be more shops await you. Subject verb agreement. I want my first daughter to be a girl. So these kind of statements could be really avoided. They are important because the intended audience may interpret you, because you are not in front of the receiver to explain what you mean through your email. So even sometimes a small comma or a pause could make a lot of difference. Next example is, if you cook, Henry will do the dishes. See, it is a very ambiguous statement because there is no punctuation. If you cook, comma, Henry will do the dishes. That makes sense. So these kind of ambiguous statements should be avoided. Next is let us eat grandpa. Let us eat grandpa. So it's quite, the meaning is quite different. In the first sentence you are planning to eat your grandpa, but in the second one you are requesting your grandpa whether you can eat. We are going to learn to cut and paste, kids. So again an ambiguous statement. We are going to learn to cut and paste, comma, kids. So why is proofreading important? Because how you write dictates your reader's confidence in you. So everything what is written is to be proofread so that your organization will carry a reputation. For example, here pork and spoon. Again spelling error. It is so embarrassing once it is being sent. Art of writing, double T. It is art of writing, WRITING. So they are important because kind of like spelling, punctuation and grammar is very important, and they are indispensable part of grammar. Here you can see lots of mistakes here. We repair washing machine, refrigerator, electric pan, open toaster, flat iron and others contact. See the number of mistakes that could be read here. That itself keeps the organization's name down. Now let us try a few editing passages or editing statements. See, spot the errors and edit. See, I'm always wanted to work for an organization. So we know how this could be corrected. I have always wanted to work for an organization. She didn't follow the advice of the physician. So these are a few mistakes that could be easily corrected after proof. Let's discuss copy reading. What is copy reading? Copy reading is very important because it is the art of arranging, correcting and selecting the quality and type of news. It's also called copy editing. So one who edits the copy is either called a copy reader or a copy editor. Please let us have a look at this statement where we say one of the students which came early is my cousin. So if we go for a proofreading, it has to be done like one of the students who came early is my cousin. Proofreading. Usually when we proofread a content, first we need to skim and check for format errors. So there are two options. Either you can do the formatting correction at the beginning or at the end. Catch overlooked typographical and content errors. That's very important to find out, to recognize and identify the typographical errors. Please go through the content to review for inconsistencies, and at the end take a final review of the document before submitting or publishing. So it's quite important to follow all these techniques when we are going with email sending, because the receiver and the sender do not know each other. So to have a kind of message sent from an an unfamiliar background to another unfamiliar background, it has to go through the channel of formal communication. That's why emails play a very important role. So let us close with C.J. Cherry's words. It's perfectly okay to write garbage as long as you edit brilliantly. With this, we come to an end of the session. Please click on this link to get access to the Sway content. So watch all the videos embedded and complete the self-assessment by 11:30 hours, and post any questions for clarification in the discussion from the link available in the student portal, and the answers to your question will be available in the program of FAQs repository link. Happy learning. Have a great day and stay safe. With this, we come to an end of the session. The link is attached here with. You can have a look at the link, you can download and you can watch the sways attached.